In the heart of Crestwood, there lived a man named Mark. But he wasn't just any man, he was the very soul of the town. His laughter was Crestwood's melody, a joyful sound that could brighten even the darkest day. From the moment Mark stepped out of his house each morning, the town seemed to wake up with him. Whether he was helping a neighbor fix a broken fence, sharing a beer at the local pub, or organizing charity drives that brought the whole community together, Mark's presence was a source of warmth and connection. Crestwood adored him, not for grand gestures, but for the small, meaningful moments he shared with everyone. Mark had a way of making people feel seen, valued, and part of something bigger. But on one ordinary evening, as Mark was driving home from work, life's fragility revealed itself in the cruelest way. The headlights of an oncoming truck, blinding and relentless, were the last thing he saw before the world went dark. The impact was brutal, metal crumpled, glass shattered, and in an instant Mark was thrown into a world of pain and disorientation. As he lay there on the cold, unforgiving asphalt, time seemed to slow down. His body was broken, blood pooling around him, but it was the memories that overwhelmed him. The cold beer waiting for him in the fridge. He could almost taste it. The PlayStation he had ordered online, set to arrive tomorrow, now a promise of fun that would never be fulfilled. He thought of the night he graduated, how proud he felt, and how he wished he had called his mom afterward to tell her he loved her, but he never did. Visions of his girlfriend flashed before his eyes. The first time he saw her, the first time they made love, the connection they shared that transcended words. He remembered the night he and his best friend got pulled over, how they laughed about it afterward, the kind of laugh that only true friends understand. As the pain grew sharper and his vision dimmed, Mark realized this was the end. The life he had lived, full of joy, love, and unspoken words, was slipping away. The last thing he felt before everything went black was a deep, aching regret for all the moments that would never be. When Mark woke up in the hospital, the world was a different place. The doctor spoke in hushed tones, explaining the extent of his injuries, but what they couldn't explain was the void inside him. The man who had once been the heart of Crestwood was now a hollow shell, unable to connect with the world around him. The town rallied to his side, determined to bring back the Mark they knew and loved. But despite their best efforts, nothing could break through the emptiness. Slowly, the crowd of well-wishers began to dwindle. Only his girlfriend and best friend remained, refusing to give up on him. But even they couldn't fight the inevitable. His girlfriend, her heart breaking a little more each day, tried everything to reach him. She brought his favorite foods, played their special songs, and talked for hours about their shared memories. But Mark remained unresponsive, lost in his own void. Day after day, she watched the man she loved slip further away. The spark in his eyes, once so bright, had faded to nothing. The warmth of his touch, the sound of his laughter, all gone. It was like loving a ghost, a shadow of the man she once knew. Finally, her heart could take no more. With tears streaming down her face, she placed her engagement ring on the table and walked away, leaving Mark to face the silence alone. But his best friend stayed. Every night, without fail, he came to Mark's side with a cold beer, sitting beside him in silence. One rainy night, Mark found himself sitting alone on the stone bench where they used to gather. The rain fell in sheets, cold and relentless, but Mark felt nothing. For the first time, his friend didn't show up, and a new kind of fear gripped him. Had he finally given up too? Mark's heart, so long dormant, twisted with the painful realization that he might truly be alone. As the rain soaked through his clothes, Mark sat motionless, lost in his thoughts. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure approaching. A beautiful woman, holding an umbrella, walked towards him. She smiled gently as she reached out, offering the umbrella to him. For a moment, Mark's eyes softened, and a small, fragile smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Just as he thought he might break, his friend appeared, standing a few feet away, eyes wide with disbelief. "Did you just smile?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with a mix of shock and joy. Without waiting for a response, he turned toward the street, shouting at the top of his lungs. "He smiled! Mark just smiled!" The commotion caught the attention of passers-by. A shop owner who had watched Mark's decline with a heavy heart stopped in his tracks, his eyes filled with tears as he looked up at the sky, whispering, "You finally decided to give our boy back." Mark's friend rushed back to him, a grin spreading across his face as he held out the beer. "All those days I came, and you stayed still," he teased. "But now you're smiling at that hoe." Mark's smile widened just a bit as he shook his head, and together they shared a quiet laugh, a sound so simple yet so profound. In that moment, the rain seemed to ease, and the world felt just a little bit lighter. Mark reached out and took the beer, his hand trembling slightly. As their fingers brushed, he felt a spark of warmth, a tiny flame of emotion rekindling in his chest. He looked at his friend, the man who had stood by him through the darkest times, and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on me." His friend's response was a simple nod and a gentle squeeze of Mark's shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their beers and watching the rain. Then Mark turned to his friend, a hint of his old mischief in his eyes. "When was the last time you told your wife you love her?" His friend blinked, caught off guard by the question. Well, I'm sure I said it this morning, or maybe yesterday. I don't know, Mark. We've been together so long, it's just understood, you know." Mark's smile turned wistful. "Do it when you have the chance," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "Not everyone gets a second chance like me."